America in Argentina. And that's when that kind of started. And I saw an article. What was it? About a week before the World Cup started, or a couple of days before, and they interviewed the South American, the CONMEBOL president, and they asked him about Mexico, and his answer has been the same, like it's been in the past couple of years. It's not on us, gentlemen. They know they have the invitation. So I mean, what's his name? I think his last name is Dominguez or whatever. So yeah, so it's that to me is the frustrating part of. And honestly, the way things are going right now, I don't expect Mexico to advance past the group stages in the next World Cup.
Oh, stop it.
No, I'm not trying to be I'm not trying to be melodramatic, but I said this before.
We go through this every 4 years, man. Every
No,
four.
Never.
This conversation is always the same every 4 years.
Holly's known me now for 20 years. I've never been like this. Never.
Yeah. I don't know.
Okay.
I understand. I understand the frustration, and what we're seeing on the pitch is just abysmal. Especially like yesterday, like it was pretty obvious that Tata Martino had basically just gift wrapped the game for Argentina. It's very weird to see a coach that has basically been very stubborn with the 4-4 or 4-3-3. Sorry, like the entire process, and then against Argentina, he decides to go 5-3-2. And it's just like, what are you doing, man? It's like you're going against everything that you had planned, and it just goes to show, man. Like Tata is a big part of this failure.
I understand it, and that's part. I mean, that's just really a small part of it. My whole thing is just the entire process from top to bottom, the entire structure, the entire planification. We don't have anything going for us for the next 4 years. We don't have Olympics. What I think we failed to qualify in every youth tournament. So how are we going to and forget the league? The league is not attractive anymore for the Mexican player anymore, and the amount of of foreigners that are in the league, most of them are not national team players. So we're not even able to attract the Mexican player anymore. We're not even able to attract the caliber of South American players that we used to be before. Okay, and then we have players that rather would be in MLS than to be in Mexico. So I mean, how do you expect the Mexican team to get better next World Cup, next cycle?
Hey, for a team that's basically Liga MX base, like we haven't had that bad of a performance.
Like, it is. It's horrible.
It's like
we're not scoring goals.
Yeah, but the whole argument that like, oh, we would be better off if we kept, exporting players to Europe, like obviously hasn't been the case. Like that's irrelevant in this World Cup. Like we've held our own against, teams that are all in Europe, like Poland and Argentina. All their players play in Europe, and I mean, it could have been a lot worse. What I will say is
we haven't been in this situation since 1978.
Run, really quick though.
Yeah.
Did you have Mexico beating Poland and tying or beating Argentina?
No.
Like I know it's possible.
I thought that we would actually be eliminated by now, and the only victory, with against the Saudis.
We're still on track. This is still going according to plan, the way everyone thought it was going to go down.
Well, normally the schedule it's like sometimes it could favor you more, where it's like Mexico could have faced the Saudis first,
Mexico does not control its destiny right now. Let's just be clear. Mexico does not control its destiny.
France '98, right? That was the same thing. Up until that last game.
But Mexico weren't. Yeah. No, I get that.
No, but you know what? And I agree with all those things you were saying, but I think the main problem has been that there's too many foreigners, and it's like we could see it with the striker situation, because there are none strikers right now. There really aren't any or that many to choose from, and I think the consequences we're seeing with the selección, where it lacks depth. Like Steph, you miss a player, and then it's like the drop in quality and talent. It's pretty big. and I think that's been hurting because of how many foreigners play in Mexico. Um, like sometimes you'll see like 7, 8 to a team, and it's just too high. But to me that's been what's hurt the team the most, as opposed to not having access to these other tournaments. Because even if we did have that access, it's just too high. We still like players with the quality to make something out of it, as opposed to not having
I
access
know
to
Ron's not
these
trying to
other
be
tournaments.
melodramatic or anything like
Because
that,
even
but
if
he's
we did
surely
have that
accomplishing it.
access, we will still like players with the quality
I haven't seen
to
this
make
team like
something out of it.
not just this performance. I'm looking.
I know Ron's not trying to
I
be
mean, I don't
melodramatic
have
or anything
blinders on.
like
I'm
that,
trying
but
to
he's
look at the
surely
entire
accomplishing it.
panoramic here.
No,
I haven't seen this team like
Ron, I certainly agree with a lot of what you're saying, right?
I'm looking.
I don't think it's quite as dire as you say that it is. I do think that the striker situation is really, really bad, and we do need to get into some of those other tournaments. It's definitely something that we've discussed on the show
agree with a lot of what you're
quite a
saying,
bit.
right?
But as far as some of the functionality of a couple of the other players, I don't think it's been that bad. I really do think when it comes to creating goals
something that we've discussed
and scoring them, it certainly is a major problem.
But
The league is saturated with imported players.
I don't think it's been that bad. I really do
And that's certainly not going to help the development.
creating goals
And then, of course, you can have your arguments of, well, shouldn't they be beating out these players?
with imported players.
I don't think it's as dire as you're saying.
And then
even the striker, not having a proper striker,
out these players.
that still for me is not an excuse. Who was right now, without looking, Googling, like that? Who are the strikers for the Spanish team that won the World Cup in 2010 and won the Euro Cup?
Had to be,
who was without looking, that was one of the criticisms for the that was one of the criticisms of that Spanish generation. Even though they won the 20, they won the 08 Euro Cup, then the World Cup, and then in 2012. That was one of the criticisms. That was one of
I mean, you can say the same for you can say the same for France. Giroud.
What I'm saying is that the coach has to have the frame of mind. If you don't have the 9, if you don't have the 2-9, you have to adapt. What I'm saying is that the coach has to have.
You seen a team with a bunch of world-class players as comparison is a bit too extreme.
Because you don't have the 2-9. Prior to 08, they were not considered world-class.
You seen the team with a bunch of world-class players as comparison is a bit too extreme.
No, what I'm saying is they were not considered world class prior to that.
I don't know by who.
You had Iniesta and you had obviously Xavi and stuff like that. But what I'm saying is that not having that pure striker, not having them, you have to adapt prior to that.
I don't know by who.
And that's what Tata has failed to do. He hasn't been able to adapt. Okay, so for whatever reason, your players got hurt, they're injured, they're not in season, they're on the bench riding the pine, riding the pine in Europe. Are you still going to be that stubborn that you're going to die by your philosophy here? They're injured, they're not in season, they're on the bench riding. I don't see the point in doing that.
Yeah, I think another glaring problem was the fact that he insisted on like Herrera and Guardado, and those guys are not center midfields anymore. They don't have the legs. They're more defensive minded now.
I don't see the point in doing
I think that was another issue with yesterday's lineup. Another glaring problem having Edson like not play was like, I mean, that is like and those guys are that's foul right there. Midfields anymore. I thought that made a lot of questionable decisions yesterday. They're more defensive minded now. But at the end of the day, guys, it's not over yet. You know, Saudi Arabia, we can easily score 4 goals against them the way we did Iraq. I know it's going to be a gamble. I know they obviously beat Argentina. They're going to play a high line, and we're going to fucking exploit that, man, with Chucky Lozano and maybe Alexis Vega. I don't know who comes in for that third game. I don't know if they got too tired yesterday. But, I mean, the fact is, like, we can still realistically score a lot of goals against Saudi Arabia. In fact, I think that was the game that Tata was waiting for to unleash the Mexican side that we saw against Colombia. I mean, that first half was amazing, and that was, like, some of our best football we've seen under Tata in the last year. And then we obviously saw what we did in that friendly against Iraq. So, right now, just looking at to unleash the Mexican side that we saw against Colombia.
Are those two teams in the World Cup?
They're not, but I mean, just like what we saw from the Mexican team in those matches, we know what they're capable of doing. And I think maybe he was kind of holding us in his back pocket until the third game to really like give us what we've been waiting for.
Here's the thing: I just have not seen anything that inspires the confidence in putting the ball in the back of the net by anybody on the team.
And I think maybe he was kind of holding us in his back pocket until the third game to really like give us what we've been waiting for.
Here's the thing: I just have not seen anything that inspires the confidence in putting the ball in the back.
Alexis Vega free kick. Outside of that, Mexico has not produced anything. So I think it might be to the point where it'd be ideal to lose to Saudi Arabia, so the whole house of cards falls.
Nah, dude.
This is not a Tata Martino just issue. This is from the top. This is Yonde Luisa. This is from the league. This is everything combined. It's from not look. You guys were talking about all the foreign players. Yeah, all the foreign players taking up all the striker roles. Now all the defense roles. Soccer Chronicles here mentioning about Spain in 2010 and stuff. Yeah, Spain had the luxury of playing with a false nine without a true striker because of the midfield they had. Tata doesn't even have that midfield with Guardado and Herrera. Like you have guys who cannot play on both sides of the ball defensively or who cannot generate chances for the wingers so you can play with a false nine. So I don't understand where all this hope is coming from. And if we do go ahead, let's say we do beat Saudi Arabia 4-0, make it to the next round. So is the whole process, all the trash that has been going on for the last 3 years, is that all of a sudden thrown out behind the window and, oh, well, nothing's broken. We made it to the round of 16. Let's keep going the same way we've been going.
Dude, nothing's going to change. Like, nothing will fundamentally change whether they get out of the group or not. That's the fact.
It will. There's no, not true, Jaime, because in what was it in early 2000s when the federation was in a downward spiral where they didn't qualify to the 17, the 20, the Olympics, and also losing to the U.S. in the World Cup in 02. That created some change where they started to put more attention into the youth development, and shortly thereafter you started to see results with the teams winning the 17, obviously culminating in the 23 Olympics and stuff like that. So sometimes, unfortunately, it has to be, and it kind of started.
I'm not convinced. Yeah, I'm not convinced that anything will happen.
Just a quick fun note on that, because the Federación kind of messed up when it came to youth, and they brought in Hugo Grondona.
No, they brought in Grondona and Grifa. Jorge Grifa.
No, they Grifa to go from club to club, but they put in charge of the youth teams. It was I confused the name of the dad and the son. I think it's Hugo Grondona.
Yeah, I know.
He's the guy that destroyed Argentina's youth teams. He did everything Peckerman did. He just took a fat dump. But they brought that guy who was doing the mess. But when Mex won, that was because of Burrillo Azcárraga. He did it out of his own pocket. The under 15 with Chucho Ramirez, and then because of Ramirez ended up. They won that, and it sort of kick-started that. But that came more from Burrillo than from I think what Federación, though, I would say, came more in like saying, okay, we're going to host Olympic qualifiers, and we're going to host a Gold Cup, because that's kind of what they did. They hosted those tournaments, and that ended up favoring Mexico in the long run.
But this is what really set up the catalyst, because the fact, do you know how much Televisa and TV Azteca lost a lot of money because they missed out of the Olympics, they missed out of those youth tournaments, and
but now they're losing that money too, even if they qualify, because you have like the Carlos Slims, the Fox Sports, they got all this other to compete with, so a lot of times they don't even have the rights.
No, but this is what I'm saying. The right now, probably the best thing that could happen for the federation is just to crash and burn, and for all the CONCACAF teams to crash and burn. Because if every team in CONCACAF just goes out, boom, right there, how are you going to sell? How are you going to sell that the Nations League is a premier tournament, that the Gold Cup is a premier tournament, that the CONCACAF Champions
it doesn't matter, bro,
tournament?
because people will still buy and pay money to see that in North America, dude.
If they pressure the club owners, and if there's pressure that the product is crap, just like I'm saying, that you have to have that sort of embarrassment, and losing to the United States in 20, and then not making it to the to what was it, Athens, or what was it, Athens in 04, or no, which no, I'm sorry, the Sydney one, the Sydney was the 2000, right? That was no, Sydney was Athens was 04. Yeah, Mexico made that one, but they didn't make it to the one in 2000. So basically from 2000 to about 03, just Mexico was just playing like crap, just from top to bottom, youth international. They were missing out on major tournaments, and there was pressure, and they put pressure on the club owners and the federation. And then now you're seeing, because of that pressure, now you're seeing the all the clubs have youth teams and stuff like that.
Ron, for me, what I think the best thing that would have happened was if Mexico would have missed the World Cup in 2014. I think that would have lit a fire under their ass. Right now, they're in the World Cup. They got paid for sponsorships, and sure, they're not going to get everything that they were hoping for. But had that cycle failed, they really would have had to rethink that.
Yeah, the thing is, like, look, we're already in the next World Cup. We're hosting it. So, like, you guys wishing them to not even get out of the group, it's not going to, there's nothing to gain from that. There's nothing to gain from any of this, because Mexico will continue to have fans fly out for every fucking game. You have Caramelo, like, you have these people that will, regardless of what's the product, they will continue to spend money and on this team, on the swag, on the jerseys, on the everything, dude, like, until the cash cow is dry. Like, Mexico's gonna ride this out until the very last drop, and by then they don't care. There's no consequences of what they actually produce out there. Like, regardless of what happens, regardless of the results, fans will still show up to watch the national team, and they'll still go pay for these partidos moleros. Like, this is not going away. Like, they're probably one of the top selling jerseys in the world, and they're probably one of the top paying fans in the World Cup right now. Like, this is not going away, guys, unless we stop paying.
All those ugly jerseys sell, Jaime. I remember that ugly Charlie Brown one, and that thing sold out. And now we got that nasty Scudo, which I blame for all this wickedness, was when they changed the badge, and that thing sells too. You're right. You could put a turd with flames, and the fans will still buy it.
Hey, question. First year, in what year did Mexico host the World Cup? The first one.
70.
Did they qualify to 74?
No.
The second time they hosted the World Cup.
86.
When was it? What year? Did they qualify?
Yeah, but
this one was 90 was banned. That's different.
No, it's not. The point I'm trying to the point that I'm trying to make here now, okay, is that if history repeats itself, okay, one of the reasons why the federation did not continue on to the World Cup the following year or the following cycle is because the history has proven that after the World Cup, there's a lot of political backstabbing and stuff like that within the own federation, because everybody's trying to hang, everybody wants to hang medals off, they're trying to hang medals that they're fighting, amongst themselves. And that proved true in 70, because when Cañedo basically brought the World Cup to Mexico in 70, everybody wanted to get him out. There was a lot of jealousy, and then you also had a lot of political backstabbing after the 86 World Cup and stuff like that. And I'm just saying, Dave, the World Cup that sort of stuff brings, unfortunately in Mexico, brings a lot of backstabbing within, the federativos and stuff like that.
We already saw it, Ron. We've been seeing this it's more like front stabbing, which we had with Grupo Pachuca, and trying to take the TV rights.
And so he was trying to take Cascarra's green book.
Yes, he was. Yes, he was. And well, we've been seeing it, but I think it's changed a lot. The dynamic has changed a lot. Um, Televisa no longer has as many clubs as they used to. Now it's Grupo Pachuca and Grupo Orlegui. You have all these other owners, different new owners. You have like the Monterrey teams now with putting way more money, and so they're obviously going to become more influential. So I mean, we're going way back. Well, you're going way back, right when it was just Televisa and their big swinging dick, and everybody got out of the way. And it's like you had Maurer and the guy from Atlas when they tried to
They
wrestle
did
the
take it for a
power
while.
from them.
They
What
did take
happened?
it for a while. That's how they. That's why
But
you remember the early
briefly,
'90s.
hey, wait, Ron, it was briefly, and then Maurer ended up in jail. It was
Not
like for like
briefly.
a
It was for a
year
couple
or less.
years. No, it was for a couple years. You remember
Dude,
Mexico? The Mexican national
Menotti,
team.
they even put in Menotti out. Menotti
I know.
lasted like 1 year with Mexico, and that's who Maurer brought. They weren't there that long. They knocked them out pretty quick, man. They took him out. But I do think a lot has been changing. We're still seeing these changes, and of course tied to television. And we saw early in the year with this one company, right? They were offering what, like close to $1 billion. What were they offering for to market the TV rights for Liga MX or something like
It was
that?
like 900 million, Joel.
Thank you, sir. My memory it backstabs me. Uh, but I mean, we're seeing that, and I think that's what we're gonna see soon. Probably after, like Ron says,
Well,
after
you're
the
gonna.
World Cup, because I think Televisa has already on lockdown. But after it, yeah, there's gonna be putazos, man. It's gonna be it's gonna get
No,
pretty.
you said it yourself, dude. There's more players involved now, and that sort in that sort of environment, you're going to have a lot of these front office problems that's going to trickle down into the operation. And I'm just saying that we've seen it twice already in Mexico, and I'm just saying right now, like I said, I'm not trying to be melodramatic. I'm not trying to be an alarmist. But from what I'm seeing and what I have seen, I just don't see any hope for this for soccer right now. And because, like I said, the league isn't attractive. It does not attract the quality South American players that they used to. You cannot attract the best Mexican players anymore. Okay, you don't have a way to gauge the progress of your teams, both at the club and the national, because you don't have participation in tournaments that matter. That to me right there is how are you going to go to the next World Cup? For me, this one's already over. So how are you going to go for 20, how are you going to go to 2026 and not know exactly how you stand, where you stand? You don't.
Real, yeah.
Winning Gold Cup doesn't mean shit. Winning the Nations League doesn't mean shit. You're supposed to make it to the final. That's what that tournament's designed for.
Yeah, I'm really curious to see what happens after the World Cup. There are going to be a couple guarantees. Number one, Tata's out. Number two, this is the last World Cup for players like Andres Guardado, Hector Herrera, maybe Moreno. Ochoa did hint about going to a 6-1, but we'll see. So, like, the one thing that's guaranteed is a lot of these players are not going to be with the team anymore, and I think that's a breath of fresh air already. As far as, like, looking into 2026, it is a little bit concerning that since we're already qualified, we're not going to be participating in qualifiers. So that level of competition is going to be a lot to be left desired. There's going to be a lot of friendlies. I don't know if we'll convince Conmebol to host another Copa America here in the United States. That might be the only opportunity for Mexico to actually get some legitimate opponents aside from.
There's not a lot of convincing there. They're broke over there, dude.
Yeah.
They
but
just got
another
wave
thing
like
too is like
dollars and
the Nations League.
Here, dude.
Yeah, the Nations League fucked everybody because now it's like there's no what's the cross pollination, right? So all the Euro, the CONCACAF, all the nations, they have their own like tournament that they participate in. So it's like we're pretty much shit out of luck with trying to get friendlies with, European teams, Brazilian teams, outside of our own confederation. So that's the only part that kind of like shot ourselves in the foot. We do have Hernan who wants to speak. I'll add you in a second. Let me read off from our number one fan on YouTube chat. Ricardo, thanks for hopping on. He says, Mexico has all sorts of problems, but at the end of the day, Mexican players aren't as good to beat a team like Argentina. And FMF are mafioso scumbags that will prioritize the pocho dollars. The U.S., some MLS has succeeded in inflecting the Mexican football. Hernan, what you got for us, man? Thanks for hopping on.
Yeah, thank you guys. I just hopped on recently. I don't know if you guys had already kind of talked about this, but what Joel was speaking about before, or what both of you guys were talking about, just the competition, the lack of competition that we're going to see in the next 4 years. I think that's going to be a big testament to the failure from the very top. With the Luisa all the way down to Tata, with the failure of the national team, from all ranks the last 2 years, because like you said, we're not going to have a lot. We're going to have a big turnover of players, and not having a U20 World Cup, not having Olympics, and then not having qualifying. All these new players that we're going to be expecting, that we don't know who they're going to be, but we're expecting them to step up and develop. They're not going to have that serious competition, and that's what is super alarming as far as if you're looking as far ahead as you are, saying that this World Cup is over. But even in that sense, where you could have taken advantage of bringing in some guys like Linus and some guys like Santi Jimenez, who are going to be big part of your core, in the next World Cup, and they are losing out on this experience too. And on top of that, you're leaving guys like Johan Vasquez out on the bench, and other young players that could be getting some experience as well and helping your team, because there's no reason that guys like Araujo and HH should be playing 90 minutes. It's inexcusable when you got guys like Vasquez and Orbelin and other dynamic players at your disposal.
Playing a devil's advocate here, because you guys keep mentioning the fact that we're not going to be in the youth tournaments like the World Cups and the Olympics. When we did go and we did win it, in 2005, and then in Mexico we won it again, like none of that actually, ascended to the national senior level. Like we haven't really been able to take those youth tournaments and those accolades and convert them into anything that's sustainable or successful at the national team level, at the senior level. So it's like
but you know what it is, really quick, is that you get to see at least 4 or 5 guys, because ultimately that's what it is.
Right.
Because a lot of them won't. Even going to the under 17, there was the golden. I don't know. I think the media messed up, calling them golden generation, because out of all those players, 23, only 11 made it to the under 20, and then from the under 20 to the Olympics, there were just like 5 left, and then once we got to the national team, it was maybe 3.
I don't disagree with that as far as because it's different when you think of, is it translated to success, or has it translated to the players that took part in those tournaments being part of your core. And I think that's what's important. I don't think that we're not in the conversation to be talking about translating to success on the world stage, because we've never had that quality. But it does translate to the aspect of that's where you're developing your national team players. In 05, that's where you got guys like Vela, you got Chicharito, you got Moreno. I'm sure I'm missing a few other guys, but
in 2011 we won it again, and I can't think of one player that has.
That one was that who was in that, like you had like Pollo Briseño and Conejito Brizuela, like those guys, they just didn't end up panning out. But then even if you go back to the 2016 Olympics. Obviously 2012 was huge, and that was the big core of our national team the last 10 years came out of that Olympic team. And then the Olympic team.
You guys are going to offend Joel by not mentioning Carlos Fierro.
I was waiting for that name.
But that's the whole point of the youth is you're not going to develop everybody. It's basically a sieve. You're basically just shaking the sieve, and then you're trying to get the those polished stones. That. So
Polished
but
turds, bro. It's a turd.
but here's the thing with the youth though is that it also sets expectations. Like at the under 17 level, at the under 17, those guys know that they can reach the finals. And what I think what they've made to the finals, what 3 out of the last 4 or 4 out of the last 5.
Yes.
So basically the 20s. I'm sorry, the 17s and the 23s. They reached what two finals in the Olympics, right? 2 out of the last 3.
Mm-hmm.
So when you start setting proper expectations, it's you remove that barrier.
Yeah.
So once you remove that barrier of the quinto partido, I have no doubt that Mexico will be at least a quarterfinalist from there on out.
Yeah.
But you have to have the you have to manage the expectations. But before that you have to set the expectations.
Right. And I think that as we go along, continuing on this, as I said, I don't disagree with the devil's advocate argument. I think that these youth tournaments, when you start talking from the U17s up to the U20s, I think they're going to be losing a lot of relevance as we go on, because these national teams are getting younger and younger by the day, and we're behind the curve on that. We always have like really good youth teams, because for some reason we don't, I guess we don't make that jump for our youth players as early as some other teams do. I hope that makes sense, because when you see some of the teams that they're playing against in the U20 World Cups, and in the qualification, and then in the Olympics, I mean, we got
dude, we have Spain just played with a player that is half of Guardado's age.
Yeah, I mean,
and he's starting.
Yeah, and you look at their, like what you said about players translating up to their developing players into from their youth system into the first team. Teams like Spain and teams like Brazil and teams like France and teams like Germany, that's actually a good problem for them, because they're bringing these players in so early when we're still relying so heavily on that system.
We're over here celebrating players that have made their 5th World Cup fifth World Cup.
Yeah,
it's like there's something wrong with that.
Yeah, there's you could sit here for the rest of this World Cup and talk about all the issues that are internally affecting the national team.
I'm gonna say the last time.
And again, that go.
Oh, really quick! I just want to say the last time Mexico fielded a very young squad was what, 78 in the World Cup.
I mean, I can't speak on that because
I was kind of hoping on the old heads for this one.
I mean, my first World Cup, actually watching was 06, and I can't say as far as back, but I'm sure you guys know better than I do on that.
I would defer a little bit on Hoyle and Ron. You guys have a little bit more of a background in that. Even though I'm older.
I don't.
Hoyle, you're kind of cutting out. Can't hear you.
Hoyle, you need to upgrade to 4G at least.
Hoyle needs to put some more credits on his Metro bill.
Hey, while he's figuring that out,
there you go.
Can someone clear up? I never.
Is it better?
It kind of got lost in the weeds, but the whole Cordoba situation. What was that? Was that just a
like him tweeting?
No. Him being off any consideration after.
I don't know if Cordoba was. I mean, this dude fell off, and then he ended up getting his second chance over there at Tigres. But apart from having like I would say like a decent like season, like this season, like I think he was pretty much erased from the national team for a while. And like, let's be honest, in that position, we have plenty of options, and he wasn't really like up there. So when he tweeted that yesterday about, it's like frustrating to watch this team, I want to be like, dude, fuck off, bro. Like,
no,
wait, really quick. Can you guys hear?
That's good packing, though, man. He wants to be there.
You know what?
Cordoba is not the answer, guys.
No, but what I'm saying is, you increase the roster size by 3 to 26. If you know you're not going to have major tournaments between now and 26, Cordova should have been there. Lainez should have been there. Santiago Jimenez should have been
dude,
there. The keeper from Santos should have been there. There's no reason to have Talavera there.
You guys are missing the big point here. What does Tata have to gain to help this team pass? He has no incentive. He has no incentive to help us out.
It's not about Tata. It's about having those players that are young right now.
He doesn't care. This is like, he tried to resign, bro. Tata has no intentions of helping out this national team past his contract date, which is probably after this elimination match against Saudi Arabia, or if we get to the round of 16, dude. This guy has no intention of helping us out.
We blame the federativos.
And that's where I would have blamed someone like Torrado. That's where I would have blamed someone like Torrado, saying, "Hey, Tata,
he got fired."
I know that. I'm saying, but that position that should be there right now, that GM, that's the bridge between the operation and the administration. That's a key position, and that's where you have to be saying, "Hey, Tata, look, let's just do that. Let's try to do this. I'm not going to pick." He goes, "Let me pick 3 players." And you pick the 23, just like you pretend those 3 players didn't exist anymore. But I said, I need to, whether you're going to be here or not, I need to look out for the future of this program. And I want to make sure that at least these 3 players or 4 players or whatever have, they're going to get the butterflies out, and they're going to have the experience of what it is to play in a World Cup. Or at least experience
a World Cup. But like, your job is to hire
for the coach. Just fire him at that point.
If you're telling me, like, if you go out of your way and offer me a contract and you're telling me that I'm in charge of the national team, then you give me full authorization and control over the players that I pick. If you're over here saying, "Oh, but you need to include these 3 players," like, you've already fucked up, man. Like, I think like that's the case. Like, you should have known ahead of time. You should have known what kind of coach you were going to get. You should have known the pool of players that could play in that system. And let's be honest, we just don't have the players that can play his system. So why we chose Tata in the first place, it doesn't make any logical sense to me. We should have played with a coach. We should have picked a coach that plays to our strengths, and Tata is not it. And
I get that. I get that, and that's why I want clean house. That's why I want
this project was dead on arrival, guys.
John de Luisa definitely needs to be out. He's the biggest person to be at fault for this.
And another thing too, like, we do like to blame Tata a lot, but we also have to blame the players, and specifically, like, we've been ragging on him for a while, but Raul Jimenez, bro, like, you have Benzema who, like, took himself out and said, "No, I need to step out. I'm not going to be 100%." And Raul, for some reason, decided to go to the World Cup instead of giving that spot to someone else that could have been a much greater help. And he deserves a lot of criticism. And I mean, he's gotten to the point where he's disabled his comments because he knows he's under a lot of
Jaime, if you were playing Sunday League and Tata was driving by and he came out and said, "Yo, I want you to play in the World Cup," there were players better than you, would you turn it down?
Yeah, bro, especially if I know I'm not 100%.
You're telling me you would turn down a World Cup chance?
Dude, if you pulled a groin injury and you're not even playing for your club and you're going to take up a spot.
Well, medically he's like clean. He's cleared. Medically, he's cleared.
I don't know, man.
I mean, he's been playing more than Funes Mori. I agree. Raul Jimenez should not have been there, but it should have never been Raul Jimenez's choice to drop himself or not drop himself. He should have just not been called up. And at the same time, we had all this controversy with Santi Jimenez, and we all thought that Raul Jimenez was taking his spot. Funes Mori hasn't even played. Mm-hmm. What was the whole purpose of taking Funes Mori?
He came back from injury too, right? And had 1 goal with the national team, but it was against Iraq. And also, yeah, I didn't think he should have been called up based on that he was coming back from injury. None of these guys. Okay, Martin is the only one who was in game shape, but he's also,
I think Kennedy Martin had a great game against Poland.
But he's limited, right?
Yeah, but I think if we would have had Funes Mori in there or Raul, I think we would have been a lot worse. I mean, we saw the glimpse of Raul in that game, man. He looked rough out there. He looked like a
that one run where he's like stumbling over his own feet.
Right.
And he could have dished it out. I just think that
I would have. I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say that I think that guy didn't have anything to pick from. I mean, he certainly could have taken Santi, right? And Santi's comes off the bench and everything like that. But that's a lot more minutes than Raul was getting, right? and then you end up with just two strikers, Martin and Santi. Who else was there available? Jota Macias hasn't panned out. He's injured. There's nobody else, and I think that's probably the only reason that he brought these guys. But he certainly should have added Santi to the mix.
Well, even if he had the roster, it just seems like it's been said, Tata was not the ideal person. For a neutral fan, they enjoy watching Mexico play in the World Cup because every time we play against like what's considered powerhouses, we try to go toe to toe with them.
Mm-hmm.
And it always turns out to be like we play like never before, but lost like always. That has not even been the case this World Cup. When he came out with that lineup against Argentina by taking out Edson, not playing with a striker, where it was clear, pretty obvious you're playing for the draw for the point. Like you already came out with a losing mentality. You already came out that you're not going to go, toe to toe. That you try and be conservative as positive, and then the subs just ruined it all. Even the selection, like Guardado, not in shape, and then he gets hurt. And what's your response? Putting in Guti when you needed defense, and that would have been
Edson, yeah.
And then, like, your center backs, your three choices with Araujo, what Araujo need to be doing there? If anything, you should have put in Johan, like, send the right message. And then the subs, take out Vega, take out Lozano, and then you put in Antuna and a Piojo Alvarado.
Yep.
Come on, like, you could have changed a different dynamic. If Tata has any shame in it, which I doubt he does, and if he does care, has Mexico's best interest at heart, he'll come out against Saudi Arabia with two strikers. Just how he went from his 4-3-3 and completely changed it to a 5-3-2. He needs to come out with a 4-4-2 with Vega and Lozano on the wings and two strikers up top. Whether you want Funes, Morty, whoever the fuck you want, but you need the two strikers up top, and because you need 4 goals. So try to show that you're gonna go out losing, fighting with the knife between your teeth, or is he gonna come out with his defensive style and try to get a goal here, a goal there, and pray for the best?
I think he's gonna go with the same lineup he did against Iraq. It was a 4-3-3. You had Araujo, Montes, Moreno, Gallardo, Chavez, Herrera, Charlie Rodriguez. Probably not Roberto Alvarado, probably not Piojo. It'd probably be Chucky Lozano, Henry Martin, and Vega. But I expect them to do a 4-3-3 against Saudi Arabia. And then depending on the scoreline, he'll probably maybe add another striker. But I doubt it, man. This dude's been very, very pig-headed with his lineups. One thing I did want to touch base on, because, this just happened today with Canada. I've been shit-talking them this entire time, saying that, they ended CONCACAF at number 1 in the qualifiers, and everybody was hyping up this country to be, they're going to do so well in the World Cup. Well, guess what? They're the first country in CONCACAF to get eliminated as of today. And, I still see the praise and, oh, Canada's playing so well. I'm like, bro, you guys lost both games, and you're eliminated. What is there to be proud of? And is this the best CONCACAF can do? This is the best that we can give them? Is this, bro? It's like, it is embarrassing.
Well, I mean, I think it's more embarrassing for the U.S. and Mexico that Canada's the first teams out, but Canada has given the best performance as of now, especially against Belgium.
But
sometimes the game,
you mean aesthetically, because they lost, bro? So performance wise, is it how they play? Is that what you're talking about? Because I mean, I guess it's nice. It's visually nice to watch, but at the end of the day, man, their defense was Swiss cheese. And there was a lot of flaws on that team. So, I don't understand why everyone's saying that they played well, because they didn't.
You didn't think they played well against Belgium?
They lost, so no.
No, but I'm talking about from a playing perspective. I mean, they had way more opportunities than Belgium. Thibaut Courtois was definitely man of the match. I mean,
they missed the penalty kick.
If someone wasn't in that match besides Thibaut, that game could have ended in their favor.
Yeah, and they obviously
The
outperformed
US
them.
Play like trash against England.
What's that?
The U.S. played like trash against England.
And people will argue that was a great performance. That draw that they got against England, people are saying, "Wow, USA really held their own." And it's ugly. It's ugly football. But guess what? They're still in the possibilities of making it to the next round, and Canada is not. So I'm also not convinced that playing well and losing is a good thing. What would you rather have?
Well, I mean, I think instead of like poking holes at Canada, we should just realize it's a CONCACAF thing because in the last 11 World Cup games for CONCACAF, it's about 7 goals scored and about 30 conceded.
Yeah.
So we are pretty much the worst federation in the world.
And I got to give credit to Costa Rica coming back from that. I mean, how do you come back from a 7-0 defeat and then end up winning your next match? I mean, that was incredible. Good for them. But overall, obviously, the CONCACAF region has been underwhelming in this World Cup, and I don't know, man. Do you guys see any chances of any CONCACAF team getting out of the group stage?
I think I still see the U.S. having it because of what do they have? Iran.
They have Iran. They're currently in third place with 2 points, 2 draws. Iran has a win and a loss. They have 3 points, and England has 4.
Yeah, I could see them getting out. I think they could definitely score on Iran. I know that they're having a little bit of a goal shortage as well, but I think Iran's the right team for a slump buster there.
I don't know. I disagree with that. I actually think Iran's gonna beat them or get the draw because I mean, Iran moves on with the draw as well. Correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Iran's a well-coached team. I think just like Costa Rica, that first game was a total accident. The ones against England, but once you played Wales, you saw more of the true side. Like I said, last World Cup, they tied against Portugal. They lost 1-0 to Spain, and I think they beat Morocco or something like that. And they have the same coach. They have the same foundation from the last World Cup. I think that first game was just a combination of everything that's going on in their home country, plus such an offensive team that England was. But I haven't seen anything from the U.S. to say that they're going to go out there and like trounce Iran.
Well, from your mouth to God's ears, man.
It should be a good one. Obviously, there's a lot of controversy with Jürgen Klinsmann saying some shit about Iran and their culture and how like they play to foul all game. And yeah, he definitely took a poke at Iran, and Quiros was not happy about that and asked for his resignation. So there's a lot of beef going on. That might inspire the Iranian team to beat US next match. But again, guys, like, it's not the end of the world. I am confident that Argentina can pull at least, 2-3 goals against Poland, and Mexico should have the firepower to get a couple of goals against Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia has to win this match. Like it's in their best interest to go out there and try and do what they did against Argentina. So there's going to be a lot of exploitation in this match, and I think we're finally going to see the Mexico side that we've been waiting for. I'm confident, guys. Like I like, again, everything's according to plan. Like, tie against Poland, loss against Argentina. You go all out against Saudi Arabia and see who comes out at the end.
Man, I'm praying for Poland to upset Argentina. I'm just praying for it.
It's not gonna happen, bro.
Hey, you've seen this World Cup. There's been a lot of surprising results.
I will say the most frustrating thing about yesterday's game is, let's be honest, man. Those first couple minutes, in fact, that first half, Argentina were nervous, shaky. They kept messing up some passes. DePaul was like a freaking tronco, man. I was like, yo, if any other coach had balls and would have like tried to go for the kill against Argentina, like, we could have upset them tremendously. We could have exploited that. But in the end, we gave them too much respect. We played too defensively. And the saddest part is, it's like you go for the draw, you go to like not concede goals, and you end up still conceding 2 goals. So it's like all for naught. I would have much rather seen Mexico go toe to toe, maybe get a couple of goals. But at the end of the day, it would have been a lot better of a display. And I think we had Argentina, bro. In that first half, we had them. It was just the lack of firepower.
Yeah, I completely agree, and I think that's what brings the team down, that you went out so defensively. Because at the end of the day, your defense can only hold so much. I mean, Mexico's defense held through like for 70% of the game. But if your offense is not helping them by giving them a break, by putting in some goals, then at the end of the day, whoever goes out for a draw most of the time winds up losing. And even if we were to play more offensively, even if we were lost like 2-1, it kind of like leaves you with like a good taste of like, okay, we almost had him, we could have beat him, we scored a goal, But now we're sitting here where we have 4 consecutive World Cup games without scoring a goal. Tata Martino coaching 7 World Cup games. 5 of those games, his teams have not been able to score. And now you're going into the third game of the group stage where you need to score 2, 3, 4 goals.
Yeah, I think a lot of this has to do with like you said, the morale of the team, the confidence, and if you're a player and you're not sure what the coach is trying to, the kind of style he's trying to implement or what exactly he has in store for you, like how can you go out there and feel confident that you can get the job done? And I think Tata went out there and he like contradicted his entire system and his entire like I don't know way of playing. And I've been enjoying these the TV shows on TUDN with like all the coaches and stuff. It's been a breath of fresh air watching like La Volpe and Jimmy Lozano. You had
Vasco and Cameronesi and all that. Yeah.
Cameronesi and Larcamon. It's been Peláez though, man. That guy's a clown. But
man,
we're at the
what happened? Getting mad. I want to give my hot take really quick.
Yes.
I might not get a chance because again we started getting this talk about send more players actually, send more players abroad, and I'm like, it's not gonna happen. It's not gonna work the way we think it's gonna work because we're seeing the results. Linus has been in Spain 3 years. He's not better for it. He's not even in the team, and we've seen it with other players that go in. Pulido went 2 years, played 14 games. He wasn't better because he was in Greece, right? They weren't teaching him shit. So you need a big amount of like. So we'll compare it to Argentina. They export 500 players a year. We're nowhere near that. Mexico's nowhere near that to try to do something similar. They have about 120 players in their league who has 28 teams. So that means their rules are like 5 players, 5 foreigners per team, but you can only field 3 at a time. So the most players that you could see foreigners starting, it's going to be 6. And I bet if you watch a lot of games, you won't see that very often. It's usually 1 or 2 per squad. And that's sort of where Mexico is failing, where it's like we're the opposite, right? It's like 8, 9 foreigners per team. So that means way less chances for youth. And what little youth you have, you want as soon as that they show something, send them abroad because that's gonna make them better. That line of thinking's not there because the teams that buy those players, they're not buying them to make them better. They're buying them because they feel they could contribute something to the club, right? We get confused because there's like the Dutch teams would do that, right? Especially the smaller ones like Vitesse. They'll get some young talent, polish it, and sell it within 2 years. But majority of clubs, they're not buying to do that. They're not trying to do that. They're not trying to sell players. They're trying to win tournaments and whatnot. So I think a lot of that whole mentality of sending abroad, it's kind of it's well, it's not well thought of. I would say it hasn't been thought all the way through.
Well, I mean, we have the argument that Mexico has fallen off since we left Copa America, Copa Libertadores, and like competing at that stage. So if you're not giving your players at home those opportunities, might as well send them abroad where they could play Europa League, Champions League,
but they're not playing that.
Tournaments.
You're just assuming that they will play, but they're not. Look at Pulido. This last year, they didn't even sign him up for whatever tournament Olympiacos was in.
Okay, well, that you can address the situation. How come they're not playing? How come the guys we are sending over there are failing? That can be discussed, and that can be looked for solutions.
Numbers.
To that. But once you send them over there, and if they do start participating and they do start playing on those,
I know we're sending very little though. You can't send 4 or 5 players and think they're all going to make it. So you're comparing that to Argentina sending 500.
I'm not comparing it to anyone. I'm saying
I'm
it's
saying
a
it,
start.
but I'm using it because that's a point of reference. So, for example, they could send 400 players. They could all suck. But if they get out of those 500, they get like 20, 30, they're in those top teams. There you go. Now they have a good team. But Max sending what, 1 or 2 players a year, having about 12, half of those not even starters. That's not going to work, and that's what they've been doing since what 90 since maybe 2000 early mid 2000s. You need to send more players, more. You have to say way more, not the number they're sending now. They have to send like 4 times whatever they're sending now.
That started once Guardado and Paco and all those guys started going out. I don't have an issue with players, going out a picar piedra, right, out in Europe if they want. But I do think we have an issue in the domestic league, and I think that's the part that needs to get fixed. I think we got to find a way to get the Mexican player to be able to play in Mexico to start before we start thinking about exporting.
No other place is gonna give them the chance at their own league, and that's what you see with like Uruguay, Argentina, Brazil. They play their own players, and by the time those players get to a certain age, they're full of experience. We've been lucky with some of our players because look at Vela. They never gave him a good chance at Arsenal. Kept sending them from team to team. I think he had that talent that he was able to flourish. But another player would have been lost because they just kept moving him around. Same with Raul Jimenez. He ended up fortunate that they put him in a, because Athletic wasn't going to give him much of a chance either. He would have been back home with his tail between his legs. And he had a pretty good agent and ended up at Wolves where he had a great career. So, and that's kind of what we see with a lot of these players. Ulises Davila, Chelsea takes them. What do? They start sending them from all these small clubs. And then he comes back to, and then, if I'm to believe that going over there makes you better, he comes back to Liga MX, can't hack it at Santos. Right, goes to MLS, ended up in Australia, I think.
He goes in New Zealand, mate. Yeah.
But I think he came back to Santos first.
No, he did. He did go back to Santos like on a trial, or he might have played with the season, but yeah.
He didn't even hack it. Coutinho, another one, goes to Portugal. Casillas, the main keeper. Am I supposed to believe he's there for what, 2 years? He's gonna come back the better player. Can't even win the starting spot at Chivas. Chivas that doesn't even have players. He can't even hold the spot there.
Look, I'm not against sending. I'm not against sending players to Europe. Obviously, there have been some that panned out, but they were well thought out projects, right? When you think about like Javier Hernandez, Irving Lozano, like these were well thought out projects. You could tell that the club that's taking them is very vested in the success of this player, and you have players like Alexis Vega, right? This dude's not even at like his full peak yet. And, Cameron Renzi said, like, this guy can play anywhere. Like, I'm not just talking like, oh, go to Holland or whatever. Like, this guy can literally play in any top league. And that means a lot coming from a World Cup winner, Cameron Renzi. And he says, like, it's not about just, like, sending players to Europe. Like, where specifically? He's like, you guys got to be more specific. You guys keep talking about, like, the fifth game and talking about, like, we need to send more players to Europe. But, like, if you don't have an actual game, an actual, like, plan, like, hey, this is how you get from point A to point B, like, we're all just, like, grasping at straws here. You know what I mean? There needs to be an actual plan in place, and that has to come from the top. And when it comes to like finding out the next coach for the next cycle, you have to factor in all this stuff, right? What does Mexico do well? Like, what kind of players do they produce really well? And so far it's been wingers, right? Like, we have really good wingers, and those are the players that we can consistently produce. Like, well, we need to have a coach that plays to the strengths of that. And like, there needs to be like a larger plan in place. But we're over here running around like headless chickens because we're so focused on the money and how much revenue we can bring in, having all these like friendlies and having all these deals with the MLS. It's like they're so focused on the money that they're not thinking about the bigger picture and like actually having a plan in place. And I feel like every 4 years, it's just like we kind of start from like you can't just like start from scratch every 4 years, bro. You have to have a longer like plan in place. You got to start thinking about a 8-year cycle or whatever. You can't just like say, oh, well, Tata sucks, and then bring in like Almada because he's the flavor of the week,
well, yeah, they put all the hopes on the coach.
Yeah.
Like why? But look, just really quick, going on what you're saying, because I feel they devalued the league because if you see all the achievements the national team had, they came from the homegrown talent, right? Anything from the Olympics to the two under 17 and the Copa Confederaciones, and even playing two Copa America, getting all the way to the final, runner up, and well, when they played in that tournament, also even finishing in like semifinals, like three times, I believe. And just more to note, even on Mex's very first participation in Copa America, they made the final. That was the first time playing that tournament, and with the teams were fielding their best players. So it's always thinking like we have to go abroad or we have to look abroad, and then not realizing everything that they have at home that has proven good. So I think they devalued the league when they started like filling them with a lot of foreigners. A majority are petardos. And I'm not against bringing in, but you don't need 10. You could have 4 or 5 that are really good. That's it. I don't know. Some of these clubs have, like, you could look at the rosters. They'll have players that they won't even get to play.
It's the cost of the player, man. It's what it comes down to, money again.
Yeah, but also like they're using it to lavar dinero. That has to be said too. That's one of the big incentives of like they'll buy a player from somewhere and then they'll raise his price and then sell him in quotations. Because the club buying them doesn't have to really be buying them. And there's the transaction made, and then you successfully have washed the money. There's a lot of proof of this having happened. So I'm not conspiracy theory or anything. It's been well documented. So I think that clubs or agents getting overly greedy, where it's like, well, instead of 5 foreigners, let's make it 10, and then they're holding them to the clubs are holding on to all those players, and yeah, it's hurting all this young talent that could be there getting some playing time. They're just not seeing it anymore, which is goes back to what Jaime said about the 2011 uh, under what was it, under 17.
Under
They all
17.
disappeared. They all disappeared. None of them really got a chance.
La Momia is like painting houses.
There was nowhere.
he's a albañil. This dude's not even playing soccer anymore, bro.
You ask him to a cascarita, dude, while he's painting.
What happened to Chaton Enriquez, This dude's like playing in like the 6th division somewhere.
But he became an influencer on Instagram.
We do have Ricardo. He hopped on. I don't know if he wants to say something or he's on mute right now. But how we doing?
Going back. Oh.
How are we doing today? Real quick, I had to hop on because this is Joel's worst hot take yet. just I said in the comments, it's just like what Pauly Shore said in Encino Man, one of my favorite movies. Hot on the outside and icicle in the middle, man. Is a bad hot take. So let me get this straight. You want Mexican players to stay in Liga MX with the repechaje, with the impending Leagues Cup coming, with no international tournaments whatsoever, instead of trying
yes.
And you just mentioned the business inside the business that is Liga MX and the foreign players that isn't going to stop, and you still want, and the second division that doesn't give the Mexican players any chance whatsoever, just like the first division. And
well, but now you're talking about the ones. But see, the ones leaving are the ones that are playing the most. So like Alaines, I do feel if he would have stayed, he would have been better off because he would have been a key player. I even feel he would have guided America to a league title. So I think he's that good.
He helped out in one.
And I think he could have helped the second time. But when he went to Betis, sat on the pine. I'm here supposed to believe that because he's in Europe, he's getting better and learning the game. They sent him to Portugal. He can't even win the starting spot there. So what are you doing? You're wasting your talent.
Why is he on the national team then? What argument does he have?
Marketing.
No,
Martin, exactly.
Guys, I want you guys to pay attention to something. The argument that sending to Europe is the answer. If you guys truly believe that, then explain to me Colombia, Paraguay, Peru, Ghana, Ivory Coast, Nigeria, Cameroon. I can name you other teams that have players or that have had players or rosters stacked with quote unquote world class and elite players playing in the best leagues, playing day in and day out in Champions League, Europa League, stuff like that. That does not equal World Cup success. There's one little ingredient in those teams that have constantly World Cup success. It's a strong domestic league, a league that can attract well, not only attract but retain its best players and basically pick and choose players from around the world. That's constant with every team that is consistently always winning or at least contending for the World Cup. The stuff about having the entire roster in Europe, having the entire roster playing in Champions League and stuff like that, that does not equal World Cup success. There's been many teams that crash in the first round, having these scenarios that the people make you believe that no, it's got to be Europe. You got to have them play day in day out, having them in Europa League, having them in Champions League. Sorry, I don't buy that.
I don't buy it either. But what I was trying to say is, I think the problem is the league is the problem, not so much that they're sending them to Europe. These kids aren't getting a chance to play like you guys said. And I don't think, and another main issue is I think Mexico has a serious development problem. They don't know how to develop players. Jaime, you mentioned before, what do you always say about what you hate about the Liga MX? The lateral passes, right?
Mm-hmm.
And backward passes. Like when's the last time you seen someone in Liga MX do like
Tiki
a
taka.
precise not even tiki taka, a precise vertical pass or a thorough ball. Like, let's be honest, that doesn't happen much.
Does Pachuca play like that?
But here's the thing: are we trying to develop players? Or are we trying to build a team? Because those are two different things.
Well, wait, really quick, because I don't. They don't develop players. Come on, Ricardo. How'd you win an Olympic medal and two under 17? How do you win with those underdeveloped players? How do you beat teams like Brazil? How does that happen?
You don't remain a top 16 team for 30 years without developing good players.
Well, I mean, look at Pardo, Pavel Pardo, Ricardo Osorio. They go to the Bundesliga already, fully developed in Liga MX, and they help Stuttgart win the league title.
Well, I've told you this, and you've known this, Foley. I don't believe in the notion that you got to go to Europe to prove your worth. That you have to somehow make it over there to validate that you're an elite player or at least a world class player.
Yeah, okay? That's all recent. It got just sold on us, and it's mainly because like all the Euro teams started buying up all the South American talent. But before they were loaded with that, you would see the South American teams beating the Euro teams, the top Euro teams. But then you have like the oil money, of course, and so you have these super teams, and players going for upwards of 120 million. It's like very exaggerated. And then the other thing that people aren't seeing is like teams that they lost their identity. You have English teams that aren't really English, and they're owned by foreigners. They're owned by like someone GTA. Se fue en carro. You see that, and I think that's kind of sad to see that. Hello.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, you guys are listening.
We're hanging on to every word, bro.
Thank you, sir. Well, you've seen that they're losing all that identity. Like some of these teams aren't really what they used to be. The owners are from some other country, and the teams are filled with like what was that one English team that won? And I think only the goalkeeper was English.
Are you talking about Leicester City? Maybe I don't know.
No, I forgot. I think it was Chelsea, one of those teams. But I mean, it's way different from Because I get it, football changes, but it used to be, each teams had their identity, they had their own style. You kind of don't see that no more.
Well, speaking of the English teams, the Premier League, has a great amount of foreigners, but also has a great amount of English players starting. The majority of the players are on the English squad. They play for the top teams in the Premier League, which is considered to be the most entertaining league in the world. How come that has only translated to England winning one World Cup, which it hosted?
In '66, before it was what it was now.
They didn't even broadcast in color back then.
There was an interview. If you Google it or on YouTube, there's a video. There's a video where you have Rio Ferdinand, Gerard, Lampard, and they're talking about how throughout the 2000s they basically had the best midfield players in the world, England, playing for the top teams that were always
Paul Scholes.
right there. You have Pop Scholes. You have Scholes. You got Gerard, Lampard, Terry. Playing in top teams. Playing in finals of winning premierships, winning Champions League, and they were asking them why that didn't
translate
success. Translate into the national team, and they were being blunt and they were being honest. They're saying, look, it's like they didn't really enjoy the national team. They kept to themselves. There was still those rivalries within the club that kind of got into the national team. And it's like, I've seen like two interviews where they talk about this, and one of them it's like, well, when I think they were talking about the Brazilians, like those Brazilian players, every chance they got to go, back to Brazil and play with and be with their national team,
it was like a big family.
It was just they would just enjoy.
They loved each other.
They enjoyed being with each other. They enjoyed training with each other, and that's what those guys were saying. That when they would go into the English camps, it was just business as usual. It's just a transaction.
It's funny that you bring that up and you mention that because the same thing happened in Spain, man. There was a huge rivalry between obviously Real Madrid and Barcelona, and at its peak when Mourinho was there, he would get inside the head of they admitted, like, dude, he got into our heads. Like, we would go play with the national team and we wouldn't interact with like Barcelona players. Like, it was that big of a rivalry that like Casillas and Piqué, and like, there was like players that just legitimately didn't like each other back then when Mourinho was in charge of Real Madrid. But Spain
Mexico was like that.
And Spain for some reason though,
like that.
They went back. They won a Euro, a World Cup, and then another Euro during that time. So I mean, I don't know how they put their differences aside and got shit done, but yeah, it's pretty impressive.
Mexico in the yesteryears, Mexico was like that. It was basically the people from the capital and the people from the provincia. They would stick to, they would stick together. They didn't want to basically be with the other side.
Yeah. So let me ask you guys a question now that we're hour 20 in. Your next coach for the national team, does he have to be Mexican? Yes or no?
No, he needs to know the league inside and out. My choice, I want La Volpe back. And it's funny because I didn't want him the first time.
Yeah, he's been killing it on the Maestros show, man. I've been enjoying that quite a bit.
Just for the past couple of years, I've really enjoyed, and I've said this to you guys before. I don't see the next crop of coaches, whether they're foreigners or not, that are more coaches than managers. Like Tuca Ferretti, yo no soy director, yo soy entrenador.
Meaning they're less tactical. Or what do you mean?
Meaning that they have the piss and fire in their eyes to basically be on the field, on the pitch, day in, day out, and going through the routines, and just
you have that video of him showing them how to kick.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's just that I don't. I mean, really, the only guys that I see like that still, and they're very few, is like Piojo. But what I'm saying is, I don't see that crop that we had before 20 years ago where you had Vucetich, you had Tuca, you had La Puente, you had La Volpe, you had a bunch of these coaches that were more coaches than managers.
So what's the difference? What's the difference?
Well,
like, how would you define a coach, and then how would you define like a manager?
Well, I mean, the manager is basically managing the entire, in terms of he's still talking to the front office. He's trying to build the team and stuff like that. Whereas the coach, he's the one that's basically in the details of basically the operation is like how his team's going to function.
He's on the front lines with the team.
A lot of managers will also delegate, and they won't run the practice. They'll have their assistants or whatnot running the practice. And so a lot of times the coach, he's right there. Sometimes he'll even play, not the full on game, but he's like right up in the player's ass, telling them like.
The few times that I went to a La Volpe, practice session, the guy was there. And like when I used to live in Houston and like back in Inter, even in the Copa Prepa Libertadores, like what would become the Interliga, you would see like I would go into those practice sessions, like very young, Miguel Herrera, Ruben Romano and stuff like that. And you would see which coaches would basically, like Holy said, would delegate the activities, and which ones would be right there just grinding it out with the players, stopping with the whistle, making sure just doing things on repetition, no one time after another. And like I said, I don't know if Mexico, the league has those type of coaches anymore. I think right now what we have is a lot of coaches relying on sabermetrics.
Well, Ron, you could see it sometimes in how they are dressed, because a lot of times you will see Tuca with shorts and cleats.
Yeah.
At his old age, you will see him in the whistle, and you see some of these other guys and they're wearing jeans.
They're wearing suits.
I'm not knocking technology down and stuff like that. But I even posted a clip of Riquelme, talking about what the hell is that thing in the back, that bra thing,
Yeah.
And it's like, that thing.
The tracking thing.
The tracking, the geo tracker and stuff like that. What does that really tell you? And he's just, just going off about that. So what if you run 5 kilometers? What does that mean, that you played well? And he's just going, he's basically just, talking shit about that. But I mean, those type of things.
But here's the thing, though. You have to.
It has a place. I'm not knocking on it. It has a place. But I still think that the coach. I still prefer a coach over a manager. And honestly, for 2026. My first option would actually be La Volpe. Second coach would be Piojo.
Oh God, I would not want Piojo anywhere near the national team anymore. That guy's.
It's funny. The last. In fact, who was it? I think it was Roberto from ESPN. What's his name? Junco Gomez or whatever. I mean, I kind of have to agree with him that the best World Cups for Mexico was 2014 and 98. So one was La Puente. I think La Puente's too old now. I don't think he.
Nah, he's too old.
He's too old. He doesn't have that piston.
He's a director right now, like sporting director now. What does he do?
No, he does. He's a pundit now. He's a pundit.
That's what they all do.
I think those were the 2 World Cups with the most goals scored. There was just a chart pace earlier.
La Puente, always known to be the defensive coach, is still had the team that produced the most goals for Mexico. And it's funny, he didn't take Hermosillo, which he got heavily criticized for. He took Peláez.
Yeah, he took Peláez.
Yeah, 8 goals in 98.
You can argue that Hermosillo was in a better position, right? Like he was.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
But I don't know. I mean, I just think that right now, like I said, I would really love to see La Volpe back there, just grinding it out, giving him giving him the 23, giving him the I mean, really, there's no 23 anymore, but just get him working with the youth, get him working with the team, because like I said, I don't know how else that Mexico's going to do in 2026 without having important tournaments other than the Nations League and the World Cup. I'm sorry, the Gold Cup.
Yeah, one thing, and Ricardo mentioned this on the YouTube chat. Thanks for hopping on, Ricardo. As far as like we're still in the Stone Age time, and we have to admit that the game of football has changed and it's more modern now, and there's a lot of data, a lot of statistics, a lot of stuff that they literally hire analysts for just to see certain things that you can tweak. It's a lot more tactical. The players are a lot more technical. You can't just say, "Oh, go out there and play with balls." Like that kind of shit doesn't work anymore. You actually have to have like a legitimate game plan, and you have to have these matchups, and you have to watch film, and you have to study your opponent, and obviously like a big like Juan Carlos Osorio was very good about doing stuff like that. So I think like for the next cycle, I just want someone that's young, has got fresh ideas, and isn't scared to go out there and just like go for it all, and I think that's
Osorio. What you are describing, that was Osorio.
yeah, and he did a great job. He got criticized. I think he
no. He's the type of guy that relied on sabermetrics and got his shit pushed in.
I think the part where he was exposed was against Sweden. I think that's the only time, but
no, he got exposed by Sweden. He got exposed, and here's the thing with Brazil. What basically Mexico did against Argentina yesterday. That's what he did with Brazil. He showed them way too much respect. Way too much respect. He played.
Well, he lost the players will admit he lost the locker room after the Sweden match. After that game, it was over.
So that's why I'm saying is I'm not knocking on the data and the modern stuff like that.
But I also felt I felt like he could have learned from that mistake, and we could have had him for another cycle. I think he deserved an 8-year cycle, and he didn't get it. I don't know if it was his decision, because I'm pretty sure they offered him the job, and I don't think he wanted it.
No, I think he said it was his decision.
Yeah.
I think one of those episodes of Football Picante, he said that's one of his regrets, is that he didn't stay for the next 4 years.
Yeah.
Just because of things panned out for him.
Because like you could have learned from your mistakes. You could have made adjustments, and he still had the players like on his side and everything. So I do think that was like a big issue going with Tata. I don't even know why we picked him in the first place.
La Volpe should have gone. Should have. He's the one that should. La Volpe or La Puente, either of those two, should have been given the cycle. Well, I mean, La Puente never had a full cycle. Okay.
Neither did Aguirre.
No, neither did Aguirre and stuff like that. So, I mean, yes, La Volpe had a good cycle, but one thing I do credit him for, and keep in mind, I didn't want him the first time around, but one thing I will, I have to give him recognition for this, is that he imposed a style that was clear and concise.
You knew what you were getting.
That's exactly. This is how we're going to do it. And he tried to play to the strengths of the team, and I respect that. Even though I didn't want him the first time, I still wanted La Puente, believe it or not. I thought I thought back then that and to a certain point I even blamed La Volpe for this, because he also spoke out, talking, in a way he was kind of basically throwing these little insults, towards La Puente, but because back then the Gold Cup didn't really mean anything. And when La Puente lost the Gold Cup to Canada in 2000, it's like they tried to make it like a big deal, and it really wasn't. The Gold Cup wasn't really a big deal, but they used that loss to basically kick out La Puente and his people. And at the time, if you recall, Lebrija wanted to take control of the national team, bring in Ojitos Mesa, and bring in his people. So there was a lot of, there was a power struggle there. So, but La Volpe kind of played into that, and was criticizing La Puente for losing the Gold Cup, which back then it didn't mean shit.
Yeah. It's like Hugo got fired for, not qualifying to the Olympics, and it wasn't really his fault.
No, yeah, but here's the thing. As much as I like Hugo, sometimes
he would have been a terrible coach.
No. Sometimes you got to keep your ego in check, and you got to keep your mouth in check.
Do you know who you're talking to, bro? It's Hugo Sanchez.
Hugo
Sanchez playing videos of him doing bicycle kicks. That's his warm up.
What he should have done. What he should have done is pretend that he's coaching Real Madrid, because you just can't. You just can't act out. You can't. And sometimes, and that's probably one of the reasons why he has never been offered. He hasn't been offered the job for Real Madrid, is because sometimes you just got to shut up. As much as like, I mean, that's why they got rid of Mourinho. They just couldn't. It came to a point where, you know what, it's not worth it. You're coaching the best club in the world. You need to act like it.
Well, I wanted La Volpe to come back after that first cycle, because I liked listening to him, because the guy would talk soccer, his style, all that stuff in interviews, and he also had a big mouth. But I wanted him to come back, but I knew at that point they had decided, we're going to give it to Hugo, see if we can get him to shut up. And of course they didn't, and so they canned him. But La Volpe was somebody I wanted to return to the.
There's one thing that
should be given the youth teams. He should be given charge of the youth fuerzas básicas for the national team. He's always done wonders with canteras and bringing out players. Whether when he was at Medica or wherever, he'd be the ideal guy. He'd be like what Peckerman was to Argentina. La Volpe can 100% do that, but yeah, there's no way he should be the national team coach, because at the end of the day, he does not have the best people management skills. But as far as his knowledge and like putting a style and having an eye for like youth players, he'd be perfect to take over that department.
Mm-hmm. He's between La Volpe from the 90s to how La Volpe managed America recently. I can tell the difference of how he has changed. I will say this:
is he still asking for happy endings?
No. When I started covering soccer, and I started going to press conferences and stuff like that, and that's kind of like really what woke me up to how crappy the press is, and how just the press in general, but in this particular case, we're talking about the Mexican sports press, is just how the reporters and stuff like that. A bunch of them are pieces of shit. I mean, I'll be honest. Because I would sit in a presser, and I would listen to everything, and I'd listen to the questions, and I'd see how they respond, and how, for example, La Volpe would respond, and how he would respond wasn't really, or what he'd say wasn't, the way it would just be misreported. It would be clickbait. And keep in mind, this was what 2003, 04, 05, 06. So, yeah, the internet, at that point, that's where you started. I mean, you didn't even have really social media then. But, you had a lot of websites and stuff like that. So a bunch of these people were just trying to do just nothing but clickbaits. And they would just try to get the most juiciest little spin on something. And, and that's kind of like when you started to realize, you know what? La Volpe really isn't that, it's not like he's looking for this, it's like they're provoking him. And that was true for Hugo. That was true for, for Chepo and stuff like that. So, but I guess the point that I'm trying to make is that La Volpe now is a little wiser than he was before, because, like I said, I thought he handled himself with America, in terms of press. I thought he handled himself well,
Okay, but he doesn't have no longer the qualifications to be a national team coach. The best he can do is.
In what regards? In what regards? Knowledge? I think, in terms of knowledge of the game, I don't see too many people in Mexico that can outsmart him in terms of football tactics.
He knows his shit, bro.
No, in fact, there was Pasarela
taking over youth systems.
I remember watching an interview with Pasarela, and he was talking about just how it's almost like he has, La Volpe has autism when it comes to football tactics, where La Volpe was trying to get wanted to get something squared away in terms of some tactical, play or whatever. and he ran into Pasarela. I don't remember where or whatever, and he asked him a question. And Pasarela or whatever, he basically said, like, hey, we'll talk later, blah blah blah, and totally forgot about it. And then on the way back, like 2-3 hours later, La Volpe's right there waiting for him, and he's like, oh shit, totally forgot about you. And he wanted to talk and iron out those tactical details and stuff like that. So it's like that's where I see I don't see a lot of Mexican coaches with that sort of I guess that drive to really understand just the basics. You know, what's his name, Pep Guardiola. When he was talking about La Volpe, he's like, man, there's this guy in Mexico that he basically in his camps, it's like it's almost like he's in kinder school. I mean, he goes through plays, he goes through practice sessions. He'll stop the entire session to making sure that whatever they're doing, it gets executed the way he wants it. And I don't know. It's like as older as I get, I appreciate that because I don't see, like I said, I don't see too many coaches like that anymore. I think right now everybody wants to be the next coach, like modern type of coach with sabermetrics and data analytics and blah blah blah, and they're trying to rely on technology rather than on a system.
Yeah, I mean, they're tools at your disposal that weren't previously there, and maybe you can have your assistant coach kind of decipher that analytics and data. But I agree, man. Like I said, it's been very refreshing to see him on Maestros on TUDN. This dude's like breaking down. Yeah. This dude's like breaking down everything and talking about, and like you see like the younger coaches like Jimmy and Larcamon, they're just like taking notes, bro. They're like, holy shit, this guy knows so much. But yeah, it's been refreshing to see La Volpe.
So 30 minutes. What was the question?
One thing that they mentioned that I thought was interesting is like during like the next coach that takes over the national team, there is no communication with the previous coach. And Aguirre said, wait, hold on, like Sven Goran Eriksson actually reached out to him and asked him for help because he didn't know anything about the culture, didn't know anything about Mexico, and I guess like Aguirre helped him out. But apart from that, like when the cycle's over, like there has been no handing over the torch and helping out the new coach get settled in. It's always been like a weird, bad breakup between the national team coach. So yeah, that's one of the things that they talked about yesterday. Like, whoever takes over Tata's like reins, like Tata should have that conversation with that coach and let them know what they're getting themselves into. But I guess like the ego thing, it's like the new coach doesn't want to hear anything about the previous cycle. Like they don't want anything to do with the last cycle and project. They just want to start clean.
Well, I think but that won't bring it up because I do think they're going to go with somebody who knows the league, the type of players Mexico has, or a local coach. Personally, if we are picking a coach from Liga MX, and he's not my favorite guy, it'd be probably Piojo, right? I'd like Ron. I mean, ideally, I would love a La Volpe type in there, or La Volpe himself. But I think they'll likely go with like a Piojo. Or if Liga MX is going to Liga MX, I'll go with the flavor of the month with Almada.
We'll see. Anyways, boys, we're almost at the 2-hour mark, so I do want to get to closing thoughts, and we will wrap up episode 361. If you're listening in on Twitter Spaces, feel free to request to speak and let us know how you feel about the last match against Mexico and Saudi Arabia. I want to start and hear you guys' predictions. Like, how do you guys feeling about the third match? Do you even care about it? Do you feel confident Mexico can score a couple goals and get into the round of 16, which will probably be a matchup against France?
Hi, man. I'm gonna stick with what I said. The prediction podcast that we had back then. Mexico out in round one. I just don't see anywhere where they can prove to me that they can score goals. So, out.
All right, I respect it.
I feel if they get an early goal, they could pull up a really good result, get a win by 3. But I do think that early goal will be key.
That's what I like to hear. I do think like if Mexico scores an early goal, that's going to pressure Saudi Arabia even more to get more offensive and more aggressive, and that's going to expose a lot of that defense. So counterattacks are going to be the key. Beating the offside trap is going to be key. If Saudi Arabia tries to do what they did against Argentina, against Mexico, it's going to be easy pickings for Mexico. The only player I am concerned about is their number 10, those shots from outside the range. Obviously, we saw what happened yesterday with Messi and the other guy scoring from long range, and that's always been Ochoa's kryptonite, unfortunately. Ron, how you feeling about Saudi Arabia? I know you want them to go 0-3.
Not that I want them to. I just don't see them having the. I don't see them having the know-how of generating goals, because they haven't really shown that to me in 2.5 years. So for me, it's, I think they're going to crash and burn. And if they're going to crash and burn, at least crash and burn spectacularly and take out Argentina as well. Because I'd love to see some good memes the day after where they just lose bad, and in doing so, it's like, ideally that's what it would happen is Mexico loses really bad, and also Argentina crapping out. That would be spectacular. Because did we talk about the memes prior to Argentina and Mexico?
No, man, those were toxic as fuck, dude. I was pure entertainment, man.
That to me was like the Univision forums of the early 2000s. They were spectacular.
Yeah, those were the last, like the 20, I would say 48 to 24 hours leading up to the match. Whole Twitter was just like going at it with the memes and the chants, and it got pretty intense, man. They started throwing photos of Maradona.
They
got personal, man. And at the end of the day,
se vale.
What's that beer company, Quilmes, bro? They've been killing it with their marketing, bro. And they had it already ready and ready to go as after the whistle blew. They already had the meme ready to make fun of Mexicans, and you kind of just have to take it, bro. Like at the end of the day, they did beat us, and you can't say anything about that.
No, you gotta take it, man. It's like I said, going back to your question, I don't see how Mexico gets out of this one.
Ricardo, I don't know if you're still on. Would love to hear your prediction for Saudi Arabia.
Oh, I don't really care. I'm not this World Cup doesn't even feel like a World Cup to me, man. I mean, I don't know. Maybe I'm different in my way of thinking, but I'm used to this shit being in the summer. I'm just waiting for America to come back.
Oh,
Road
God.
to the 14 part 2. No, but what I will say is the Telemundo like programming of the World Cup has been shit, man. Give me Univision all day.
I will say, like, to compensate for the fact that they don't have the rights, I think DUDN has been the place to go post match and pre-match to watch like the analysts and the coaches and stuff. Telemundo, though, as bad as it is still better than the shit we've been getting on Fox. I forgot who mentioned it, but it was like Alexis Lalas like eating a turkey on live television. Then you have like Ocho Cinco talking about McDonald's. So as bad as it's been for Telemundo, it's not as bad as the English like broadcast. I haven't even been watching any of the matches in English. I can't stand it. But yeah, it's still. You think if Telemundo's bad, just go on Fox and you'll appreciate it more. I also like love the fact that our sporting director is out there talking about like the World Cup when he should be focusing on getting Chivas a title and refuerzos, but that's for another conversation.
That guy's such a bore. Have you heard him talk?
I mean, he's a typical Spaniard analyst, right?
Joder.
Yeah. He said something on the broadcast like slipped up in the Germany game, and like I started dying, bro, because he said something about culo, and I was like, I don't think you think what you think. Like, I don't think you know what that means, like in Spanish, Pastor, your predictions for Saudi Arabia?
It's general consensus with everyone else. You know, we said this. I said this months ago. It was the first World Cup where that illusion, that wonder, that feeling of like hope was not there. And these group stages matches have shown that. Uh, I look at a Saudi Arabia team that has an identity, a style of play. They have a well connection with their coach. They're all rowing towards the same path, and they do have like that difference maker with the 10, while everybody else knows their role, and they can score. They can generate chances. I mean, against Poland, they lost, but they generated more shots and more shots on target than Poland, and had like way more possession. I think they had like 67% possession versus Poland. I just don't think it's going to be that cakewalk that we thought it was going to be, 3 months ago. I think Mexico's going to have it tough. I don't see Mexico making it out of the group.
Joel, your thoughts? Maybe he's washing the dishes.
Hello?
Yes.
I was actually doing that. No, I think it will bank on that early goal. I do think it will come down to that, and of course, on what's happening in the Poland Argentina game. But I feel that an early goal can change a lot. So let's see if they could finally break that 4-match dry spell, because don't want that carrying over to the next cycle.
For sure. Well, folks, it sounds like I'm the only optimistic person here. Again, this is all according to plan based on my predictions. We'll see Mexico get through the next round and have the opportunity to play France in a round of 16 match. I think that's what's going to happen. But the one guarantee that I have for everyone listening in, whether live or later on tonight when we upload this, we will be back for the next episode. We'll talk about what happened probably Wednesday night. And we look forward to having everyone return for another episode of Cantina MX. You guys have been amazing. Thank you guys so much. And hope you have a great start to the week. Bye, guys.